Hi, I wanted to welcome you today to our Break into Film Lab, which is in partnership with Encounters Film Festival. This is our first South West Lab session, and today we're going to be exploring routes into the film and TV industry with a particular focus on opportunities in the South West and Bristol. This event is pre-recorded, but please feel free to like and comment. I'm Bex Rose, I'm producer at the BFI Film Academy South West. And I'd also like to introduce our host and panelists today. So hosting today, we have Mickey King, who is assistant producer at 5 Miles Films. We're also joined by Mel Rodriguez, who is founder and creative director at Gritty Talent. We also have Natalie Moore, who is senior film officer at the Bristol UNESCO City of Film and also Bristol Film Office. And finally, Stacey Olika, who is creative diversity coordinator at Channel 4. Thank you all for joining us, and I will hand over to Mickey.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for attending this event today. It is so exciting to be a part of this, and I think it's just going to be a brilliant panel with the lovely faces that you can see in front of you. So on that note, I'm just going to quickly hand over to Mel to explain a little bit more about who she is and her background.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. So I'm Mel Rodriguez. I am the founder and creative director at Gritty Talent. What is Gritty Talent? It is a TV tech and talent company that I started just under 2 years ago. Previous to that, I worked in TV, factual TV mostly, in current affairs for 2 decades at the BBC and various other places to make lots of programmes. And yes, I'm happy to answer and talk about lots of things about my career before Gritty, which I realise might be as relevant as Gritty now.
Great, thank you so much, Mel. And Natalie, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Moore. I oversee our UNESCO City of Film designation in Bristol, which is a status that we have, but it's all around sort of planning where the city is going with film and TV, and then raising the profile of film and TV to our international city partners as well. So it's an international promotional tool, as well as almost like setting the vision for the film and TV sector in the city. And I also oversee our film office, which is the logistical, operational side of bringing filming into the city and then making it happen on location, any production, big and small.
Thank you. And Stacey?
Hi everyone, I'm Stacey Olika, and I am the Creative Diversity Coordinator for Channel 4, based in the lovely, beautiful Bristol hub. And my role centres are kind of looking at Channel 4 programming and making sure they're authentic and representative, and also with a main focus in the South West and looking at how we can bring Channel 4 together with the community. Before that, I was at the BBC Natural History Unit for a year. And before that, I was actually just a freelancer. I had graduated and I was just freelancing for 3 years, working across design, creative production, and curatorial work. And that's me.
Thank you guys. It's so exciting to have you all here. And my very first question is something that I'm sure everybody is dying to know, is what were your first steps into these amazing careers that you all have now?
I don't mind if you want to go around. So I actually studied in Bristol. I studied law. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and I did my first year of law and realised I'd make a rubbish lawyer, because even though I was good at talking to people and putting stuff together, I didn't actually enjoy the law much, and I looked rubbish wearing a suit. And at the time, I didn't know what to do, but now I know that all of those skills, those kind of creative skills and working with words and working with kind of stories and people, was actually pointing me towards TV and media, but I just didn't know it at the time. So my first brush with the media was actually on the Bristol University radio station Burst. I just thought I'd do a radio show just for fun. It was called Chick Chat. It was really bad. And I now look back in my kind of, like, more through a more feminist lens and think that I should have maybe chosen a different title. But it got me into doing broadcast. It got me into that rhythm of scripting, getting contributors in and just really enjoying it. So my first media job was actually in radio. So I went from there as a postgrad at Bournemouth in broadcast media, and then started working at radio stations. I was doing traffic and travel. I was in the Flying Eye, doing the broadcasts over Birmingham. and I got my first TV job, I think kind of a few years after doing radio, and it was by pure coincidence. I'd done work experience at Midlands Today, which was the kind of Midlands TV news, and I walked into the office of Inside Out West Midlands, which is the current affairs programme for the BBC. Sadly, it's been decommissioned recently, but I just walked in and said I'm really interested in current affairs, handed them my CV, got a call a few months later, and that was my first telly job. And at that point, and this is something I'm really glad that's changed now, they paid me for half of it, but half of it was unpaid. So I know we're going to talk about this a bit later, but at the time, actually, that was a big deal. And I could live with my parents in the Midlands, so I could do it. So my first TV job was belt and braces, straight in as a researcher on a current affairs programme. We managed to win an RTS award for one of our stories that I'd found. And then that was it. And it's that thing about when you're in, suddenly all these opportunities then fan out because you've been able to make that first move. But yeah, originally I thought I would be a lawyer or a radio news presenter. So there you go.
So I was the opposite to you, Mel. Actually, I wanted to be a music video director. That was it. My sights were set on media, and I did a degree at Royal Holloway University. It was part of the University of London in media arts, and then I realised that I wasn't really suited to directing at all, and got a bit confused and didn't know what to do. So I ended up doing a master's in gender and sexuality in film. And I really like the academic side and the sort of film criticism side of things. And then again, just sort of couldn't quite work out where to take it. So I did a bit of work in retail, and then I ended up doing a 3-month placement with Encounters Festival. And I knew I wanted to be part of sort of a support mechanism for the industry, but didn't quite know the career paths within that. And was based at what was South West Screen at their offices in Bristol. And they're now Creative England. So it's that sort of facilitation side of things that I was a part of. And I met quite a lot of people and made some really important contacts there, one of which was the manager of Bristol Film Office at the time, and was looking for someone to come in and help. So I went in for a trial and then got a temporary job, and then ended up with a permanent job, and ended up in a role that I was actually very happy with very early on, and then moved up through the ranks to manage. So yeah, that's kind of where I ended up, but I ended up doing something quite different, I suppose, to what I had my sights set on when I was starting out.
And for me, I kind of relate to the both of you in terms of I kind of had an idea that I wanted to be kind of a creative in whatever kind of realm that fitted in, but I actually studied graphic design at UE, and I graduated in 2017. And I kind of always say that I kind of became an accidental freelancer because I wasn't really thinking about what I wanted to do post-uni. I just wanted to get out of university and just start living my life. But when I kind of graduated, I kind of looked around and I was very scared because I wasn't sure what direction I started going in. So I just started kind of creating my own content and working on my own stuff. And I did that for about 3 years and kind of kept that momentum always going, kind of never stopped. And I did random things. I did part-time work. I was part-time tutoring kids maths and English. I was part-time curating. I was part-time designing, etc. And my first steps actually into TV was because of something that I had created as a freelancer. And I kind of created a networking event. And because I think I put so much energy and effort into it that it became that I had people attend. And for me, one of the lucky things is that some of the people that I attended were BBC staff members. And I remember just going up to one of them and I was like, do you know what would be nice? I would love to work for the BBC one day, kind of just putting it into existence, like putting it into the air, but not knowing how it would manifest. And I think for me is I continued creating my own content, even if that opportunity didn't come straight away. And I think it was literally 6 months later, and I was offered a role at the BBC. And I think it was just the idea of even if I didn't know how it was going to come about, I continued to kind of create work and do work. And I started off as a production management assistant at the BBC, at the Natural History Unit, and then did that for a year. And even through that, still kind of creating my own work, still doing my own thing, working across TV, film, design, creative production, curatorial work, and kind of never stopping. And then that kind of helped me. And then I also got into radio, actually. I started presenting. I kind of liked the sound of my own voice on radio. And that was kind of the direction, I started to see myself going into a specific direction. And then literally a year later, I got offered the Channel 4 job. And yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's so interesting hearing all three of your stories. I feel like there's an overriding theme of opportunities can come from the least likely of places and at any time when you might not be necessarily expecting them, which is really cool. I'd also just like to give a bit of a shout out to BFI, because my personal journey in TV and the career that I have now started through the BFI regional course. And I had absolutely no experience or knowledge of anything to do with film and TV, and didn't even know that that was a viable career option at the time. So huge shout out to them and the courses that they provide as well. So my next question is, what would be your guys' kind of key pieces of advice for anybody who's looking for a career in these sorts of industries? Mel, do you want to kick us off again?
Sure. So for me, even though my company uses technology to connect creatives to TV, I actually think the number one thing that you need is people skills. And so I think the number one thing to get started is actually growing your contact base and growing the way that you communicate who you are and what your skills are. So even though we are an increasingly technological society, people still buy into people. So they need to know what you're excited about, what your skills are, what your interests are. You know, in fact, Stacey, you're a great example. Stacey curated an amazing historical artifacts exhibition, and that got me thinking she'd be great in a history series. I actually pitched Stacey to Channel 4. It didn't get commissioned, but that's another story. But the point is, she got there in the end. But the point is that it's people pick up on you based on the individual things that make you light up. So know what you're passionate about, and when it comes to TV programs and approaching production companies, know what they're about, what are their specialisms, what are the programs they make really well. Even if you don't like that particular program, even if you're not a great fan of Bake Off, know why the audience love it, know how well it does, know what happens to some of the main characters who go off from there and do other cooking or other kind of adventure programs. Because if you understand the way those production companies work, you're going to be a real asset to them. Even if you're someone who's not got much production experience at this point, the thing that will set you apart is having done that homework and being someone that they feel like they're really keen to get to know about, because they do have lots of choice. They're busy people. So, you know, you don't have to shout loud, but it's about knowing what you're good at and being able to connect in with what they're good at as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree. My advice would be around communication. It's about what we call the soft skills, you know, as well as, you know, having a base of education or training, whatever it might be, or just being, you know, very keen to get into work and building those contacts. It's knowing it's not just about communicating to be agreeable. It's about communicating in a way where you're able to negotiate. Because in every line of work, there's a level of negotiation that takes place, you know, and when we're dealing with film crews, they'll come in and they'll expect lots and lots and lots, and there's an element of pushback that has to come with that. And even as a junior member of staff, you know, and there is an element of pushback that needs to come, but that it's that diplomacy that you need in the world of work. Having that is really valuable. I also think if you're thinking about a freelance career, understanding what's involved in that, understanding how to manage your finances, you know, having a sense of how you're going to do your tax return, that all these sorts of things that may be daunting when you first come across them, the more you can learn about them, the easier it is to feel empowered in that sort of line of work. So it's the behind the scenes stuff, and I think that builds confidence in yourself as a person, to then be able to step forward and go, right, I understand kind of where I'm going with this. So when an opportunity does come your way, you're able to snap it up.
Yeah, I think I would just kind of echo that. I think the whole idea of like being passionate about something and how people buy into people, and how, like, even for me, I think a lot of the things that I was able to do and to kind of like get through the door was because I was passionate, not even because like I knew I had the skills there. I'm the kind of person that I was just very passionate about a certain subject, and I would do everything I can to kind of learn along the way. And I think for me, that's what really helped me at the kind of like the really early steps of my career. I still feel like I'm in the early steps of my career, but like right at the beginning of everything. And I think also just understanding transferable skills, and understanding that the fact that like you may not necessarily be working in TV now, but the things that you're doing that require kind of teamwork and require like logistics and budgeting, etc., that can actually be transferred into the TV industry, and just understanding what you can take from what you're doing now and that can work in the screen industry. And also I think overall, or kind of create the content that you wish to see. I think never allow anything to stop you from creating what you want to see and what you want to do. I think that works really well in your favor, not just in terms of like people finding your work, but also for you as a creative and for you to understand what you want and kind of where you want to be as well. So just continue creating whatever it is that you really want to see.
Such absolutely solid advice from all three of you there. Could not echo any of them more than what you've already said. I also just wanted to pick up on that last comment from you as well, Stacey. I think it's so important to be yourself. And the times that I've ended up in the jobs that I've absolutely loved and had the best time on and learned so much has been from me being really authentic to myself, and also being willing to acknowledge where actually there might be a bit of weakness here, but I'm now positioned in a situation where I'm surrounded by all of these incredibly talented people who want to help you learn and develop. I think it's really worth remembering as well. So the next thing, I'm really excited about this question because I feel like there's a real sense of change and awareness that's happening in the industry at the moment across so many different platforms. So I would really like it if all of you could just touch very quickly on barriers and challenges that you've experienced or seen, and how they've been overcome, and how all of these kind of things are being tackled in the industry at the moment.
I'll kick off. So in the early noughties, when I started working in TV, I am happy to say that now some of the barriers that I experience are not there now, or they have certainly been pushed and dismantled a lot. But actually one of the biggest obstacles for me was to grow my career. I had to move to London. So I had my first 2 TV jobs in Birmingham. I'm from the Midlands originally. I wanted to move back to Bristol because I'd loved being a student here, but I could only get my next level job, 2-3 years into my career, by going to London and working on the big network shows that were all there. And I know we'll touch on this a bit later, but I'm so happy now that that's not the case, that you can actually grow a really rich TV career across the genres here in Bristol, in South Wales, in Manchester. In the early noughties, I had to go to London to get the network experience, which would get me the credits to move up. So for me, that was a big barrier because, I was from a family who, were not terribly affluent. So me moving to London, paying rent in London on a junior researcher salary was significant. I'd say 60 to 70% of my monthly income went on my rent. And when your money is being spent all in that direction, it reduces a lot of your other choices about what you can do with your time and your energy, because you're worrying. So I think that where the industry was and the prohibitive costs were an issue for me. And then as I moved up the chain, money became less of an issue. Being a woman directing did become an issue. So I was on mostly male shoots, male crew, camera men, sound men, camera assistants were men. My editors were all men. There were a few women in senior roles, but classically, there were very few women who, on a shoot, who were, the shoots I was on, I was one of very few. And I only experienced misogyny several times, like a few times, but the times I did experience this, it made me think really hard about whether I should be a director, because actually there was an uphill battle sometimes on a shoot to get people to respect me before we got on with filming. So I'm incredibly happy to say that I think a huge amount of that behaviour has gone. Culturally, the industry has moved on. There have been great strides, and there's cameramen who were rude to me, but bordering on misogynist in that time period, who now I know I'd never book, and I know people who'd never booked them either because of their old and misguided behaviour. But it was a real issue for a long time, and I still think that women in senior roles in TV are sometimes held to a much higher standard and are the first to be critiqued more heavily, whatever they do. And I know that there's a lot of shifting and shaking that I'm really proud of, that I see happening every day, but I think that's a work in progress, and I'll be really happy when I don't feel like being a woman in a senior role carries an extra burden. Yeah.
But in terms of challenges I've sort of been sort of faced myself, or barriers. I understand where you're coming from. And I think, you know, I work in a different sort of area. I don't work directly in film and TV, but I have definitely experienced a setback in being able to progress in my career from having children and working part-time, and feeling that there were, you know, sort of 6 to 8 years of my career that were fairly stagnant because I was working part-time and the opportunities were few and far between. And I think that is probably fairly universal across different organisations and career paths as well. I think in terms of the film and TV industry, where that's concerned, that there are steps, definitely, there are changes going on, and there are organisations that are supporting people, whether it's, you know, women coming back into work, or fathers coming back into work after, or people that have had a career break or change direction. Organisations like Media Parents that allow people to come back in and to find their way in that sort of challenging environment again, and not feel like they've had to take 5 steps backwards in order to go forwards, or they're missing out on the opportunity. So I do feel like, as Mel says, there are changes happening there in those areas. But there are many barriers, I think, in all sorts of industries. Film and TV, you know, notoriously is seen as very sort of elitist, and I think it's very challenging to get into if you're coming from an underprivileged background, or if it's just not something that's ever considered within your family as a career path, as a viable career. So there are schemes, and there are methods, and there are areas of work that are addressing that, but a lot more to be done, I think, in those areas. Something that we're focusing on heavily is how we support people in underprivileged communities in the city and from backgrounds in the city to access film and TV careers, where it may not even be that they're interested particularly in film and TV. They may be interested in construction, or being an electrician, or a carpenter, or in hair and makeup. And how do you access that talent and then bring them into careers in film and TV, where they could build a really successful future career, and where we then get a local talent crew base as well, coming from sort of new young people as well. So there's a lot of work going on in those areas, certainly from our side.
Yeah, I think kind of, Natalie, what you touched on in terms of like when you come from an underrepresented background, I think even a creative career isn't even something that's kind of seen as a career path to go on, and then let alone, like, kind of for me growing up, TV wasn't even a career option. So I think the fact that that's not even brought up as an option, and you don't envision yourself being in it, is a barrier in itself, and kind of shuts you away from even looking at different opportunities that there are. And I think then as you grow up, and then now you're having to kind of put that belief in yourself that you are able to do it, comes with so many kind of, that's a whole issue within yourself. And I think then when you step into that world, and whether it's, I think, being young, being Black, and then being a woman, I think there's so many things that come your way, and having to continue, like, push forward and to kind of stand your ground and be like, I deserve to be here, I belong here, I have every right to be here as much as you. I think for me, definitely, the moment that I kind of graduated, I kind of felt a lot of that whenever I kind of stepped into spaces. But I think more and more we're seeing kind of young people of colour kind of really stepping up and moving up in ranks, and being in spaces where they can make decisions and they can open the doors for people. So I think that's kind of something that we're really seeing is changing as well.
I absolutely could not agree more, and I think that there's something to be said for across the board being able to see reflections of yourself and who you want to be and what you want to be doing in terms of higher positions. And I think that's a really, really valid point. So my next question is, what changes would you like to see in this industry at this moment in time, in terms of making this industry more accessible for all?
I think it leads on, I think it's a work in progress, many of the things we've already talked about so far, but I think there's big bits of work that I can see being done but need to be amplified now, to do with, I think, mental health and that impact of the long working hours, sometimes budgets being really worked to the bone sometimes. I think that for the industry to be accessible to all types of people from all groups and backgrounds, this industry needs to be kinder. I think there's still a lot of situations where we work long hours and we feel under incredible pressure and we need help. And I think, you know, there are lots of brilliant groups and kind of schemes and things being put in place to help safeguard now. But I think there was a mentality in the past which was you just get on with it, and I'm really happy to see that that's a shift, but it still needs to happen on the ground, I think, quicker. That's my first one. My second one, I think, links to many of kind of Stacey and Natalie's points already about what it takes to get in and progress. So I think the industry still has an obsession to some extent with your degree, if you've got a degree, what your degree's in, and also your education, and also your network credits to date. So what have you already done? And this creates this real prohibitive kind of vicious circle for people who are incredibly talented, have loads of practical skills, probably have lots of kind of academic and subject skills as well, but feel that they can't apply for jobs because they don't have 3 network credits and they don't have a degree from a Redbridge University in the subject area. So I think I've seen a lot more creative employment happen, loads going on where people are looking beyond those things. I would like to see the TV industry in particular recruit much more widely, because actually there's a talent problem. There are not enough people currently to do all the jobs that need to be done in TV in Bristol right now. There are lots of people who'd like to do those jobs but maybe aren't being considered for them, but potentially do have the skills. So it's about understanding where all these translatable skills and these related experiences can bring people in. And when they're in, it's about nurturing them and helping them so they don't fail, because there's a lot of issues in this industry where if you kind of come in and you don't succeed, people think you're not good. And that's really unfair, because I think it takes years and years to be half good. And like, you know, almost 20 years on for me, I still massively fail every day in certain things. So I think it's a myth that you have to be perfect, and I want the industry to embrace sometimes people not being 100% perfect all the time.
Yeah, I think absolutely agree with everything Mel said. I would like to, certainly in the work where I am in my area of work, I would really like to see sort of more focus on local need. I think, you know, the film and TV industry is growing. It's growing enormously at the moment. There's, you know, on the back of, not just on the back of COVID, but for many reasons, there's this huge outpouring of new content. And as Mel says, there aren't enough people to fill the jobs. And there's an opportunity for us in our cities and our local areas to say, you know, this is where the need is. This is where we can allow people to come into this industry. But a lot of the money and a lot of the influence around talent and skills sits at a very national level. So it's sort of, I think it feels like it needs partnerships between national organisations and local expertise to then access to then find out where the need is, and then that activity, that growth that we're seeing in the industry can support people into work and support people into viable careers. But it needs a sort of a matching up of where the sort of the funding is, I suppose, for skills, and then the local expertise on the ground, and that will really help the industry to grow in a very sustainable way, rather than it just being almost like a sticking plaster where you bring people in, and that in turn supports mental health, which is I think is a huge problem. And you know, people have to come into this industry knowing that they have to have quite a thick skin and be resilient, but that's fine. But if you're not enabled to do that, if there's no support mechanism to help you with that, that makes it very challenging for people to stay in careers in film and TV.
And I think also for me, I've been kind of like being in my role, learning a lot more about looking kind of like the social model of disability and the medical model of disability, and the fact that the medical model of disability kind of states that disabled people are in fact disabled because of their disability, while the social model of disability actually looks at how disabled people are actually is due to the inaccessibility of social structures and the inaccessibility of buildings and whether there's such things as ramps, etc. And I think for me, as a school industry, we need to have a bit more of an understanding of that and how we can really support talent who are disabled, and providing a lot more opportunities as well. And then another point, I think, especially when we look at the kind of TV industry, kind of starting young and starting with like educating and opening the minds of young people so that they know as well that they can do this too. And I know we all have self-doubt in believing ourselves and believing in our capabilities, but when you have organizations and people that believe in you, we're able to kind of show young people that we support them, whether it's like providing resources and toolkits that can kind of help them envision their future in this TV industry. That goes a long way as to how they see themselves, the kind of opportunities they go. And what's really interesting is that there are roles today that probably didn't exist 10 years ago because this generation has created them. So imagine what can happen in 10 years time. So it's so important to continue educating the generation before us and really providing them with the best possible means to continue making the industry that we are in better.
Absolutely. I think all of these topics are so crucial to be spoken about, and it's really exciting. It really feels like this is a time that people can step up and really share those views and really have those discussions wholeheartedly. So it's really great to hear you all talking about all those kinds of things. And then onto something that we've touched on a little bit already, is this seems like a really big time of change for here in the South West. We've had a lot of companies moving here. As Mel's already said, there's a lot of kind of shortage of jobs in terms of production, which is something that I personally haven't really felt or experienced till this point in my career. So can we have a little bit of a conversation about pros and cons of being in the South West at the moment?
Well, I think if you are emerging or established production talent, it's the best place in the world to work in TV right now, because for the first time in a long time, you have more choice about what job you do, because there is, as I said, you know, the demand currently exceeds supply. I think that also creates challenges for people coming in. So it's not all rosy, because actually, you know, there is this big explosion, and as I mentioned earlier, people are still maybe looking for people with certain skills, but we need to think more broadly. So I think getting the first gig isn't going to be easy necessarily still, but I do think what this kind of production boom does is just open out the opportunities for those starter gigs and just getting to know different genres. What Bristol does now, which it didn't have for a while, Bristol has such a diversity of genres here now. You know, if you think about the range of factual programs that are made here, the drama that's made here, the live shows that are made here in the studios here, if you look at kind of the digital content that's made here, you can learn so many different skills and genres in this city and in this region in a way that 19.5 years ago for me wasn't possible, because actually I could only really look at, if I wanted to work in Bristol, it was like in factual, it was natural history and mostly cooking and lifestyle, and I had to already have credits to get the job. So I think it's such a great place, and it's a place where culturally I think that a lot of change is happening, but I've always found Bristol a really friendly and connecting place where people help you. For many years I ran TEDx Bristol's TED Talks, and so many people volunteered, so many people gave up their time to train our volunteers as well, media professionals training people on cameras or scripting or whatever. I think this is an amazing place for where people exchange skills and help you grow. So I think using the network as well is one of the real pros of being here. But Bristol is an expensive city to live in, and the transport is rubbish. And as we open up, getting to shoots if you don't drive is an issue. You know, getting into kind of, you know, edits or studios is an issue. So there's still some quite real barriers that might mean being talent, you know, here isn't all roses. But I am just the biggest fan of this city, so I think the cons are far outstripped by the pros.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan. I mean, I think there are definite hurdles to overcome. You know, so I work in a lot with drama production companies that come from London, and they'll work at the studio in Bristol. They'll work on location. And what we're missing in Bristol is a good bank of drama production companies that can facilitate all the high-end TV drama that's being made across the country at the moment. So we get a lot of that work, but we aren't generating that work in the city. So it's very difficult to build a career around the high-end TV drama work and be based here. but yeah, that's not to say that there aren't opportunities. There are, you know, as Mel says, there are big opportunities in that line of work. So I think perhaps if that can grow further in the future, that will give us another sort of a good bedrock of production activity going on as well. But I think culturally, you know, Bristol is it's so vibrant, it's so dynamic, and I think what I would love to see more of is, you know, I've been working in the film office for years, and we facilitate productions that are often filmed in Bristol. They're not always about Bristol, they're not always set in Bristol. You know, to see more content, more stories about Bristol and its culture and its, you know, the different communities. So it's something we're really trying to encourage through the City of Film designation, and I know others are as well. You know, how do we tell Bristol stories? How do we showcase Bristol stories? And I think if you're someone with an idea, if you're an aspiring filmmaker and you have a story to tell, there is a real opportunity there to sort of showcase what Bristol is all about, what your community is all about. We're seeing that now with some of the new filmmakers that are coming through the BFI network and BFI schemes and other schemes in the city as well, that there are these sort of new voices that are coming through, and we're able to hear those voices, you know, for the first time, and they're really taking off. So I would love to see more of that. I would love to see Bristol on film more, and you know, Bristol stories, Bristol voices, Bristol accents through some of the content that's on TV and film as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be amazing to kind of hear Bristol accents and like locations you recognise. I think that would be amazing. And I think I would agree with Mel as well in terms of accessibility. Bristol isn't great at all with that. There's still so much more that we need to do. But I think in terms of the Southwest, you've got incredible production companies who want to work with local talent. I mean, the great thing about Channel 4 is that with the Channel 4, having the Channel 4 hub, having the office in Leeds, and just the commitment to kind of work within the nations and regions, and just how important that is, and kind of decentralizing the fact that everything has to be so London-centric. And then the hiring of like the new creative diversity people like myself and Nyla, who is the creative diversity up in Leeds, kind of shows like a real commitment that like we want to hear stories, we want to hear authentic stories, we want to hear stories that represent the people in this region. And you've got amazing production companies that like are making the shows right here in the Southwest. So it's also like important to have an understanding of like what's happening like literally next door to you. And I think once you kind of realize that, it just opens up your eyes more to like the possibilities of what you can do. But I think sometimes, maybe as a Southwest region, we don't shout that enough as to the fact of like what we are actually doing, what is being made here. And I think the more we do that, the more actually we attract just local talent to even want to stay here, but also attract others to kind of really open their eyes and ears to what Bristol, the Southwest, has to offer.
Absolutely, it really feels like a time of change in ways that could be challenging, but also really exciting. And it does feel like now is the time for Bristol's TV and screen network to really develop in ways that maybe we haven't seen so much previously. So it's an exciting time. So in terms of being based here in the Southwest, there seems to be so many more opportunities available over the past, I would say, sort of 5 years that are into this industry. And I personally started by doing work experience with a company called Drama Television, who are an amazing indie who really take that time to invest in up and coming talent. And it seems like a lot of the companies across Bristol are starting to open up these schemes, and not just the independent companies, but also the bigger names that we've been hearing for our entire lives. So I was just wondering if we could take a moment to talk about those sorts of apprenticeships and all of those opportunities that seem to be starting to emerge now.
Yeah, so I think the problem is almost like you almost need one place to go to find out about all of them, because there is so much now available. And I think the issue is not that it's available, it's being able to access it and understand which bits to go for at what time and what they're looking for. So there's an idea for a piece of tech that I might put on my next list to do. But in all seriousness, I think I'll give you some examples. So from the factual side of things, so I've worked quite a lot with Screen Skills, and they have a constant slate of opportunities that they work with on a regional level and on a company level and a channel level. All the channels effectively put money into these pots to deliver apprenticeships and boot camps, and they come around. And I know that Encounters engages a lot with Screen Skills as well to deliver some of these. So look out, check out Screen Skills, check out the Encounters social feeds, start following people on social media who run these schemes, because they pop up all the time. So for example, there's a mentoring scheme I know that Screen Skills run annually, and it happens regionally, and all the different companies in the different regions deliver bits of it. So there's so many opportunities. I think it's about just nailing down which ones you want to apply for and getting the timing right. Other great places, of course, BFI, the Doc Societies, the factual equivalent, they have constant fledgling filmmaker schemes that run. They're kind of, there's funding, there's mentoring, there's all those. In terms of actual production companies, I think there's just no substitute for getting in touch, finding out what they need from you. Is it a CV? Is it a link to some films you've made? What is it? What's going to catch that talent manager's eye? Find out the talent manager's name at a production company. If you can, chat to them. If you can't, ping them your details, and just be really patient and do that thing of being patient, but kind of checking in, not pestering work, but just in a kind of, every so often check in, because opportunities in production companies come up all the time. They usually come up quite last minute. If your CV or your email is towards the top of someone's inbox, and you've sent them something that shows, that you're interested and you're keen and you're available, you're probably going to get a call back at some point. And that's actually what happened to me. I forgot to say that my Inside Out job happened 6 months after I gave the guy my CV. So it happens, but sometimes there's a time delay. So get into people's inboxes. Facebook groups, I think now Facebook groups are often, actually probably the quicker way for things to happen. It's an issue if you're not on social media. It's an issue if you don't have broadband and digital access. This is a barrier actually, but if you are able to access the TV Facebook groups, it's where jobs often get posted and people start to tag people and say, are you interested, etc. So it's about expanding your network in those ways. And one resource that I found really useful as a member of BEC2 is that you get free training and free access to materials and resources, and sometimes that can help you then connect with people as well for opportunities. So there's lots out there. You kind of just need to get really organised about what your sources are and checking in regularly with them is my advice. And I'm sure that Stacey will talk lots about the channel. Channel 4 alone have a load of schemes, so it's about just understanding who runs the schemes and when to apply to them. And I should just do a very quick plug for Gritty, because this is what we do. So we specifically work with talent who are from underrepresented groups, underrepresented for any or many reasons in TV, and we specifically connect people in both to on and off screen. So if you're interested in factual TV, check out Gritty. It's free if you're talent, just to say.
I don't know if I can add any more to that, Mel. You covered it so well. But no, Stacey.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine. Stacey, yeah, I think it's important. Stacey picks up on the Channel 4 stuff. I think also it's there are apprenticeship schemes that are happening. I know that Icon Films and Drummer have apprenticeship schemes. I think so there are production companies in the city that do run apprenticeships, even though they're not always the go-to model. They do work in some cases as well. So that's definitely a way in. And again, just keep an eye out for those. I think if you want to get into drama production, it's good to accept that you will have to go in as a runner in most cases. So to sort of understand that any experience you get on a production set is hugely valuable, and that it doesn't take very long actually, being a runner in most cases, to then start moving through the ranks and getting those credits that you need. And there is a lot of production going on. It's about it's making those connections and just having the tenacity to keep going and keep following up on those inquiries. I think with the production teams that you're aware are working in the area that you're in. But I'll stop there and I'll let Stacey speak about Channel 4.
Like, oh god, pressure. No, I'm joking. Yeah, so I think there's loads of different kind of opportunities that we have. I'll start off with kind of just very locally. We have, with our Bristol hub, that kind of what we launched end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and we were having a lot of in-person events, and then everything had to kind of be virtual. So we're kind of really starting up having kind of more virtual events and more in-person events so that we can kind of connect you with different production companies in the Southwest, as well as with the commissioners. And that's just kind of a great network and relationships to have. And then more on like a production kind of route, we've got the production trainee scheme, and we've got production trainees. We've worked across kind of getting young people into production companies and providing them with like this, the skills and training. And the Bristol companies that we've kind of worked with have been Plimsoll, True to Nature, and Drummer. And we have that run twice a year as well. So the next one is coming up, so it's really important to kind of be aware of that. And you can also find those things on our website for careers. And it's just really, I think it's just really important to continue kind of like checking up on that and then looking at that. And then we also collaborate with loads of different organizations, such as like, so it's really important as well to kind of get yourself involved with like local creative organizations, because we work with them a lot, such as Babassa, and we've got different relationships with other creative organizations. We've also got something called the Factual Fast Track schemes, which focuses on like addressing the skills gap, which we see a lot of, and that's running now for the second year as well. And then we have like 2 placements as well in the west of England. And normally it is in Wales, but we've managed to get 2 in the west of England. So just kind of keep alert on that. Yeah, there's like, so those are kind of some of the things that we're working with, and a lot of the things that, so a great thing that we've been doing is we've been working with deaf and disabled people in TV and created a new kind of networking strand where we connect disabled talent with production companies, and we're on our 3rd one, and it's just really, that's a really great way as well. Like, and that deaf and disabled people in TV is a Facebook group, so kind of as Mel was saying, like these Facebook groups, also being involved in them because we work with them closely a lot, and it's a really great opportunity to meet like Channel 4 companies that we're working with, but also people that are crewing up for some of our shows as well. So there's quite a lot of stuff across the board.
That all sounds so exciting. It almost makes me want to start again so I can go and do all these things as well as what I'm doing now. So in terms of these kinds of opportunities, I can imagine that it's still quite competitive. Obviously, everything is known for being quite competitive in these sorts of industries. So I know, Stacey, you spoke to us a little bit before already about how you actually started to build your CV before you were applying for some of these roles, or even whilst you were doing that. So I think it'd be really cool if we could just have a bit of a chat about what you can do in the meantime if you're waiting to hear back from places, or how you can kind of still get these aspects of your CV up to scratch without necessarily having to be placed directly in one of these schemes immediately.
Should I start? Yeah. Okay. So I think for me, well, I'll be so honest. I actually ignored my CV for a very long time because I was doing so many different things. I didn't know how to kind of, I think as a creative, you don't know how to kind of put that down how to put that down in your CV when it's not just necessarily TV that you work in, but it might be design, it might be like, it might be like art, etc. I think it's so hard to kind of pinpoint exactly what you do on a CV. But for me, I kind of really focus on like the key things that I was doing, and I always realized that everything that I did had centered around representation and identity, and I made sure that no matter like the kind of CV that I made, that kind of always came across in what I was doing. So like, it's the case of people can tell your passion based on your CV as well. So that's kind of building your CV, but that in between time, what I was always doing was creating. Like, it doesn't matter who saw that work. Some people could see it, people could not see it, but always, for me, it was just always important to continue doing work, because as a creative, that's who you are. That's what you do. That's like almost your very existence is to create and to make things happen. So for me, like, that always has to be kind of at the forefront. Like, even if you don't get a job opportunity, or even if you're waiting to hear back, is to just continue doing work, because you honestly, for me, is you never know who is watching your work. And that has been kind of my biggest blessing, is that I had no idea who was watching my work, and the people that were watching my work were actually people that would soon give me a job. So you just never know where like those doors could open. So like, never kind of stand still and like block your blessings in a way. Yeah.
I think the whole concept of a CV is changing and having a radical overhaul. So one of the biggest things, so I know I didn't explain much about British Talent earlier, but we created an app where emerging talent from underrepresented groups create their profile. So rather than having a CV as such, actually what I'm doing is putting in front of decision makers somebody's, effectively it's like a mini kind of show reel with all the key info about them. So paper is out, and actually in 2 minutes a producer or an exec will see a film this person's made, they'll see what they're like on camera, but this is for on screen. You know, they'll see the last few things they did, you know, they'll see a bit of their Instagram. And I think that the reason I'm telling you that is obviously a lot of TV recruitment is still fairly traditional in the fact they'll ask for a paper CV, but you have to put yourself in the mindset of the person looking at your CV. They'll have probably looked at 10 to 15, they're really busy, and they're only going to spend probably 30 to 40 seconds on the first third of your CV before they've made an initial decision. So rather than cramming your CV with everything and anything, I think it's about the top third of your, whatever it is, paper document or profile, whatever it is, speaking you know, your passions, as Stacey was saying, your passions, your values, your key skills, why it is that person is going to have to hire you. And unfortunately that means being really personalised and tailored. So if you're applying to a company that mostly makes food content, pull out the aspects of your CV that are going to apply to that, because that's what they'll see first. If you've got 5 different natural history things at the top, but actually they're making, I don't know, food or politics shows, then you will seem less relevant, even though you've got lots of experience. So I do think there's not many shortcuts, but what we have now is the ability, as Stacey has done in spades really, is to create. Don't wait for someone to give you a job to create content. You can create content fairly inexpensively that shows your skills, that shows your storytelling. If you've got a Vimeo or a YouTube account or a TikTok account, I can tell you that I will look at that probably before I get to the second page of your CV. So think about what you're putting online and what it says about you. And then the other thing is about actual craft skills, technical skills, learning to use cameras, learning about lenses, learning about depth of field, learning about codecs, learning about stuff that might feel a bit technical and hard, but there's tutorials online now. So if I see on the first third of your CV that you've learned to use a certain editing piece of software, then that tells me that you're a self-starter and you're someone who, given time, I can trust with, you know, that technical job. So I think it's about thinking around all the skills you can grow, as well as what you're putting on your CV.
Yeah, and I think you know, going back to what we were saying before about soft skills, and you know, any work, any sort of interaction you're having where you're building those soft skills, where you're able to communicate with people on a regular basis, and then you're able to evidence that, because they are so important, as well as the technical and the formal training side of things, to be able to be a part of a group of people that can get along together and work well as a team. You know, it should be something that people are able to sort of value more highly, I suppose, and people do value very, very highly. But if you're able to articulate that in some way and to build that experience, it really counts. I think it's a shame that we're in a situation still where we're not able to interact physically. You know, encounters normally would be a physical event, and that's so important for relationships and for striking up conversations with people from industry that you may otherwise not be able to be in a room with. So, you know, hopefully at some point we'll be able to be back in physical spaces together. And I think that if you're able to get to events and network, or even if it's, you know, through Zoom, and be part of those networking events where you can strike up a conversation and build a relationship with someone who's from the kind of area of work that you're interested in, or can just give you a bit of inspiration. Those sorts of conversations are so important for building those career blocks as well.
Absolutely. The other thing I would add about that is I still struggle with my CV even now. But also just thinking about what you've actually done. Recently I updated my CV, and there were so many things. I showed it to one of my old colleagues, and he said, "What is this? You've missed out half of the things that you've done." So I think it's really important to actually think, okay, but let's go through each thing that I've done, whether that's passion projects and stuff that you've done for yourself, or bits of work experience, and just think, actually, what did I do whilst I spent that time doing that project, and how can that be related to whatever it is that I'm looking into now? I think it's really important not to undersell yourself, because I know that it seems across the board in these industries, all of us can have a little bit of imposter syndrome from time to time. So the other thing is there any other specific opportunities that any of you would like to talk about? I know we've covered some already, but is there anything else?
I don't need to do too much of a gritty plug, but it's just to say that we are free for talent, so there's no cost to working with us. Our mission is to help the industry pay for this work. So the TV and wider film industry pay to access the platform that we built, but for talent it's free to create a profile. So we're currently looking at submissions for our app for on-screen roles. So on what's on screen, that could be a presenter, a contributor, an expert, anyone who you see on the telly box as themselves, being themselves, also voiceover work. Some of these things are a great way to get a feel for if that career is right for you. So you don't have to be very experienced, but if you're someone with a really nice voice, or you're someone who has a specific expertise, as Stacey did with kind of her curation and history projects, and we are putting them in front of decision makers in TV for on-screen work. So people create a profile on our app. There's a few questions we ask to ascertain, who that person is, and we specifically are working with people who are underrepresented. And what that means is there have been, or there still are, barriers to that person accessing a career in TV more than your average. So that's why we're prioritising those people. So the off-screen work we're doing, the app isn't ready yet for off-screen, but we're doing lots of bespoke connecting in the old way. So if someone's interested in off-screen work and is from an underrepresented group, please get in touch with my team. You can email talent@grittytalent.tv. Look up our website, just look up grittytalent.tv, and my team will get in touch and just discuss how they can help you and what your skills are. And I think that just take the opportunity to all of my team are TV professionals, so just get to have that opportunity to speak to them and find out how they can help you would be my offer, because we're passionate about getting a much more diverse and exciting and wide talent pipeline, not just in Bristol but throughout the whole of the UK. And I just would echo about when kind of opportunities for live events come back online is get out there and meet people. I don't know when TEDx is coming back, but when it does, there will be opportunities for hundreds of people to volunteer backstage. Yes, it's unpaid, but you learn camera skills, you learn producing skills, you learn scripting skills, you learn marketing skills with professional people. So there are lots of volunteer opportunities that I'd say are worth doing if you do them for a limited time and it's helping you grow a skill. Then some of those things are still worth doing.
TEDx Bristol is amazing to volunteer on as well. Several years ago when I was a university student, I actually volunteered on TEDx Bristol.
I remember. I have a picture of you with the camera.
And also Gritty Talent team are lovely. I've had several Zooms with them, so highly recommend.
Wow, thank you so much to all our panellists and to our host Mickey for sharing all their valuable insights and information today. I think there's a lot to take away from that session. Before we say goodbye, I just wanted to tell you about some of the opportunities that we have open at the moment at BFI Film Academy South West. You could apply for our creative mentoring program, which offers young creatives, specifically from underrepresented backgrounds, access to creative mentoring. And that's going to be from local film and TV industry professionals. You can apply on our website, and applications are open until the 1st of October. You might be a writer, an aspiring writer, and at the moment we have an opportunity to develop your own script. So our new screenwriters group offers young writers based in the South West a chance to develop a 5-minute short script idea. So you can apply for either of those opportunities by heading to our website. To find out more about what we've got on offer, you could also check out our social media channels. Thank you so much for joining us today. Goodbye.